I'm gonna hit record, by the way.
Yeah,
I've heard that SHOT Show is just absolutely ginormous.
it was wild. It was two massive forums, multiple floors. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. But
Did you
and
have any highlights? Like, I understand, I was listening to Mark and Steve's kind of recap, and I understand it's mostly a tactical show,
yeah,
but did you have any mountain hunting stuff that stood out to you in particular?
um, I mean the Seekins Precision booth was pretty sweet. They've got some new rifles. I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but they're really going into that lightweight hunting rifles. I mean
Yeah,
they
they've
already
got a
have
new
it.
chassis rifle
Mhm.
somebody was telling me about.
So their folding chassis was pretty sweet. Very hunting focused, not as much as the um, I don't know, tactical long range shooting focused like a lot of the other chassis are. So that was cool. Got to stop by the Koa booth and just like check out all the scopes in person. Stuff like that was the main thing I was there for. But I still walked through every booth and just kind of got to know some people, and any of the contacts that I knew in the industry just stopped and had a conversation with. So
Did Koa have a new 77 out yet?
no, they're not gonna. So they're done with 77s. It's gonna be 66, 88, 99, and then of course
Oh,
the
because
55.
last year they told me they were releasing a new 77 this year, so they must have changed their. I wonder. Listen, man, I think the reception to the 66 was a little
Yeah.
lackluster, and I wonder if
So
based on that they were like, I think they just keep missing the mark by 15%, and I'm
think
like,
so. I
I
like it, man. But
listen, I want to like it. The
yeah,
glass is incomparable. I will go to my deathbed on that. I still think it's better than the Swirl glass.
yeah,
The problem is their packaging, man. Like, it's just not a hunter friendly package. I love the double barrel focus, but it makes it harder to pack away. Their weight keeps coming in 4 to 5 ounces in the wrong direction. It's like they keep getting so close to what I want to get excited about. But then
yeah,
when you're competing against like the ATS 65, which is arguably one of the most perfect scopes ever created, or the ATX 65, which gives you the modularity, they just, yeah, it's so close. Like, I think they're the only ones who are really pushing Swaro as far as
yeah,
quality goes. And like the lack of like a rubber armor on their housing. Like,
sure.
I think there's just a few places where like, and I don't know, maybe hunting just isn't enough of their market, but they seem to be advertising pretty heavily. But yeah, they get close, but they just miss the mark for me in a couple areas.
No, that's fair, and that's a preference thing. And I love the double barrel. I'll take the extra weight to pack that away any day.
Yeah,
It's so much easier for me to get that fine focus. Just a personal preference thing.
I agree, man. And the lack of handshake when you go to adjust the focus, like
Yep.
it is it's really a 50-50 thing for me because I love the packability and the streamline of the ATX form factor, but then having that focus off barrel, like it is a huge improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Did they have binos yet?
No, but they mentioned that they're going to be refining their Bino lineup because they have their SV, BD, and Genesis, I think, but they're going to clean up their lineup. They said over the next couple of years, so they've got their scope line set. They're happy where it's at, and now they're going to start working that Bino line. Was kind of what they told me.
I think it's smart to ditch the 77, or like they needed to ditch one of them. Like, having
Yeah,
four models from 66 through
nobody else.
99
Yeah,
is
nobody else
not
does a
necessary.
77.
No.
And that 66, I mean, I can't do the math off the top of my head of diameter to light gathering, but you're talking 15, 20%. And the 77 almost weighed what an 88 does. My dad's got an 883. I have a 773. And I mean, it's pretty darn close.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to pick up a 66 and then he's going to have that 88 and he's kind of my main hunting partner. So we'll swap off which one we bring based on the hunt.
Yeah, I think and that's the one reason I decided to go with the ATX platform. I currently have an 85, and I'm like, I can get the 65 if I ever want a smaller one.
Yeah.
My issue is because I'm always doing the filming, I always feel like it's doubling as my long lens, so I don't mind the
Yeah.
extra weight. And I've never been in a situation, except for maybe when I go to weigh my pack, where I'm like, oh, I've brought too much optics. Like I'm
Yeah.
seeing things
Yeah.
too clearly.
No, I'm with you. I took the 553, that Koa 553 on a sheep hunt once, and I was underwhelmed. I spent a whole day hiking when I probably wouldn't have had to if I brought a full magnification 80 millimeter spotter. So now for me, it's always a bigger spotter on hunts that it means a day of hiking to get close to something.
Yeah, I had the 553 and the ATC with me on a mule deer hunt in Alberta this year when I was guiding. And in that particular situation for final approach stalking, I was blown away at how light and versatile. Like, I thought this is the perfect optic for this. But if we're talking about landscape level glassing, when you actually start adding it up, you're not really have that much more glass than a pair of 15s or 18s. Like,
Yeah.
and the focus, I mean, yes, they go up to 40, but like how clear are they really going to be at 40? Like yeah, they're a great add on, but people are hitting me up and it's like, oh, should I get this as my spot? I'm like, not, oh, that's my cat. I'm like, not for your main spotter. No, not unless you are like, if I was primarily an elk or a mule deer hunter in the States, maybe I could make an argument for it because you're really just from long distance, you're really just wanting to make sure something's legal. And I think you can do that. You can judge 4 points, you can judge 6 points, you can make those
Yeah.
calls from a mile and a half away with an ATC. But if you're doing stuff like we do, like goats and sheep, and it's just from long distance, it's not enough.
On those 55s. What I like about the 66 is it has all the same magnification as that 88. The only thing you really lose, and I haven't put them side by side, is that light gathering.
Yeah.
But when you're hunting northern latitudes in August, there's more light than you need already. So I'm excited to try that 66, and I hope it shaves. I think it's like 12 or 14 ounces off the 88, and it's still going to get me everything I want. We'll see.
Yeah, I think from a an optical perspective, you will be very happy with the 66. It checked all my boxes. The my only reservations were again just on those little kind of fine details, the packability of it, the form factor, and the lack of like a rubberized armor, and that's just more of an annoyance
Yeah.
than anything
No,
else.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I thank you for taking the time to come on. We've kind of chatted about doing this for a while. For everybody listening, this is Rydell. He's the founder of Aziak Equipment, which everyone knows is the manufacturer of my favorite tripod, and has been for quite some time. And we've got some new products on the way. We're going to talk about the current lineup. But I think where I'd really like to start, because it was funny, it wasn't even until I don't know if I ever knew where you were from. I knew when, like, we've been emailing for years, and I
Yeah.
knew they always came from the lower 48. But it wasn't until last year, I think we were texting or something, and something came up about you working at Barney's. And I was like, okay, hold on, wait a minute. So let's back all the way up. Where did you actually
Yeah.
grow up?
Totally. I'll try and keep my life story a little bit short here. It's kind of I've been all over the place. So, born and raised up in Alaska. Both of my grandparents on my mom's and dad's side came up there, like late 50s, and both my parents were born up there at Air Force bases. And then my parents stayed up in Alaska even after my grandparents got out of the armed services. I was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska. Lived in Eagle River, and that's kind of where I grew up all through high school. And then the Barney's connection was my uncle Bob Hodson, the late Bob Hodson, was the owner of Barney's for 35, 40 years. And I worked under Kevin Dana, who's the current owner at Barney's. He was my manager when I worked there. So that's kind of that Barney's connection. From Alaska, I came down to Montana State University in Bozeman to pursue an engineering degree. It was just kind of a get a good degree and still get to do all the outdoor stuff that I wanted to do. From Alaska, I would have stayed, but I kind of wanted to get a little bit better education than I could have got up there. Yeah, 4 years there, met my wife. We got married in college, and then I took a job with the Navy out in Washington. So then I worked for the Navy for, I think, almost 7 years is what it ended up being. And 3 years of that, I kind of did Aziak as a side hustle. And a lot of stuff in the Navy kind of formed how I did engineering and how I like to figure things out. Because on the side, all through college, I always did like mechanical things. Like I ran a chainsaw repair business for years and like always fixing cars and boats and whatever. When I got into the Navy, I just kind of got into a research and development role that was really fun doing torpedo work. So for like 7 years, I worked R&D on torpedoes. I got to go to the Arctic a few times with that, which was really fun, and do like torpedo exercises up there. Got to be on boats a lot. So that just kind of like formed how I don't know, I approach design work, like making things really simple and usable in field conditions. And then from there, I was able to, after 3 years of doing Aziak as a side hustle, about a year and a half ago now, able to quit that, move back to Montana, kind of made a headquarters here for Aziak, built a little shop, and yeah, living by my wife's family here and running Aziak equipment here in Belgrade, Montana.
One of the things that's always surprised me about that you wouldn't think about when you think about the Army and the Navy is they're actually quite progressive in like systems design. Like a lot of the like not lean manufacturing per se, but a lot of similar processes have been inspired by R&D that came out of the armed services in a variety of functions. And maybe just because they're such big machines and they're just designing
Yeah.
so much stuff that it's like you need to have a systems based approach. So that would be, I could see how that would be a very intriguing environment to work in, especially when it comes to engineering, because there's such an opportunity for a systems based approach when it comes to design.
Yeah, I mean it's a giant lumbering machine. I mean it was a pain in the butt working for the federal government when it comes down to it, but I was able to weasel my way into like a pretty specialized team, and that was really fun working in like a small team, just to like push the envelope of research and development on like new projects. And I loved it while I was there. Really happy that I'm done with it and like doing my own thing now. But yeah, it was good.
So talk to me a little bit about hunting and fishing. What was that like growing up in Alaska? Was hunting, I know your dad is one of your primary hunting partners, so I'm assuming that he's been into it since you were a kid, but what was it like growing up in Alaska in that regard?
Yeah, so I mean, going back to my dad, he grew up going out. My both my grandparents had Super Cubs, and they just flew all over the state. Before it was really popular and busy, before there was Onyx to figure out where to go. And I mean, they just landed anywhere. I mean, not anywhere, but they're going and finding landing spots in a Super Cub and hunting all over the state. So my dad grew up primarily moose and caribou hunting. That was like his big thing. He never got super into mountain hunting with his or with my grandpa with his dad. Um, and then that kind of influenced how I grew up hunting. The main thing that we always did is it's like I never grew up eating beef. It was moose every year. Like if we didn't get a moose, that was a big problem. So that's kind of the main thing that I did. My dad started taking me out when I was, I don't know, I mean like grouse hunting and salmon fishing ever since I remember walking was what I was doing. And then got into moose hunting maybe when I was 10 or 12. And I remember shooting my first moose when I think I was 13. I was in seventh grade. And just from there, I kept hunting with high school through him as I could. I mean, high school's a busy time. I was doing sports and other things, but as much as I could, I got out with him in the field.
And so when does your, and then I'm assuming when you're in college, it's also kind of tricky to, the fall is a busy time. So you're in Montana. It's a great place to
Yeah.
hunt, but I wouldn't imagine you had a bunch of spare time to get out in the mountains.
Not a ton, as much as I could. There was like whitetail hunting spots close to town, so that was fun. I harvested a couple whitetails in college, and then getting towards my junior and senior years, I had more connections because when you move to a place like Montana and you're from out of state, like it takes a while to like just figure out how hunting even works. And I
Mhm.
mean, I honestly remember, and it sounds kind of foolish now, but I was like, what do you mean that's private land? I can't hunt there. Like that concept to me was like very foreign. And of course, I knew there was private land. There's like places in Alaska I couldn't hunt, but when we boated up a river, it's like 50 miles in every direction. You can do whatever you
It's
want.
no different in BC. Like most of the
Yeah,
guys up here don't really understand why onyx is such a big deal. Like you
yeah,
could literally hunt your whole life in British Columbia and never come within eyesight. And definitely not all places, but I mean a
yeah,
lot of the bigger kind of mountainy areas where we go, it's like there's literally hundreds of miles in all direction of
yeah.
just crown land is our version of public land. But so that's funny. I can actually relate on that quite a bit.
So as an 18-year-old, I'm like, what do you mean I can't hunt there? Like I see elk. Like so like and I mean I'm exaggerating that a little bit, of course, but that was weird to me. Or like, a buddy'd be like, oh, I'm going to hunt with a friend on their ranch. And I'd be like, oh, can I come? And he's like, oh well, no, like, it's just how it works in Montana. Is like if you got a ranch hookup, it's awesome. But if you're on the public land grind and like trying to find your spots, that takes a while. So college took a while. But once I had some buddies that hunted, I was able to harvest an elk in college and got out for black bear hunting a little bit, but never able to get anything. And got really into fly fishing in Montana, fishing all the rivers here, which is awesome.
So when did the desire to, because I'm always interested in the inception of an idea. Like, what was the first product? Was it the Bino clamp?
It was, yeah.
So walk me through that. I'm assuming you're out
Yeah.
one day, you're like, there's got to be a better way to do this. What does that whole process look like?
Yeah, so I really didn't get into mountain hunting and like more optics focused hunting until I was out of college. And that's when I started doing some of the more mountain hunts with my dad in Alaska. Got up in the high alpine in Washington, which there's some places in BC that I'm sure are familiar, but you
Yep.
got to get way up high to get out of the trees in a lot
Oh
of the
yeah.
spots. I was out on the coast or closer to the coast. And I just remember spending a lot more time sitting with my binoculars glassing and, learned about binocular to tripod adapters, started trying out some on the market and just in my head, it was always just like a little bit clunky, a little bit multiple parts. It didn't like make sense why it had to be so complex. And I was out shooting with a buddy one day, and we were just like talking. I was like, what if like I just like put an Arca Swiss plate right on my binoculars? What if I just like zip tied it on? Was like my first idea. And then from there, I just started playing around in CAD software, just like 3D designing things at home, because I kind of had that training through working for the Navy. And I just started mocking things up and 3D printing them at home for fun. And like I tried one and I was like, God, this works pretty good. Like I like this. And then I got one for my buddy, and then he's like, hey, can I get like 5 more for all my buddies that I shoot PRS with? I was like, sure. Like I'll print some off for you guys. And then it got to a point that I was giving enough of them away that I was like, well, maybe I should like try and make a little bit of money off this idea actually. And that's kind of when I started. Like I made a website and like figured out how to get a business license and everything else. So unlike maybe how some people do is they like form a business, then figure out their products. It kind of came first with that product for me. And then I had to figure out all the business stuff after that. And I had a full-time job. I had a kid about to be born. So it was like, it was late nights, weekends that I was really trying to figure out like what this business would look like and how to do the final product development on that product to get something I could start shipping out the door.
It's so funny because what I did for a career for the last 7 years before I quit that job to pursue Mindful Hunter full time was a business consultant. And one of the frameworks we use a lot of times is there's this lean startup methodology, and it talks a lot about minimum viable products, customer discovery. And lots of times people are getting a hold of me because they got a product or they have an idea and they're looking how to bring it to market. And you accidentally did things like in a very progressive way by what modern standards would be considered the perfect way to start a business, because for very little financial investment you were able to test product market fit, which is like, and you were able to find out through those people wanting your products before invest. And that's what I always tell people, like if you build something great, everything else is going to solve itself. You'll definitely have to figure it out. But if you don't build something great, or if you don't have that product market fit, I don't care how great your advertising is. I don't care how many influencers you sponsor or how many affiliate codes you get out. You're always just going to be treading water. So that's very interesting that's the way it played out, because I do think, you know, in an ideal circumstance, that's the way that things are supposed to play out.
Yeah. And it worked out awesome. And, you know, I had other, you know, like side businesses all throughout. Like I'd fixed up chainsaws and boats and other stuff, just like as kind of side hustles. But I didn't know anything about business. I was trained as an engineer, and like I didn't know how to build a website or like form an LLC or like do all this junk. And it's tough because all that gets in the way of when you just want to do product development. So I had the Bino clamp ready to go, and it was 8 months till I like had enough of that time on the side to like build a website and get it sold and get a UPC and get packaging and, you know, all this other junk that you have to do for the business. Because and I'm still a one-man show, and it's been a one-man show since the beginning, like no funding or anything else. So it takes more time that way, but it ended up working out well. And I don't have any investors to answer to. I don't have anybody else that's like trying to form in this product or push sales super hard or do anything like that, which is really nice.
One of the other things that I really like about your model as well is that you're very grassroots. Like you don't do the whole affiliate code. There's not a whole bunch of paid ads. How were you able to get the word out originally about the Bino clamp? And what did that kind of trajectory look like for market adoption for the Bino clamp?
Yeah, good question. I'm still learning how to do that because I still am like pretty small. A lot of it was sending out samples to just people that I knew in the industry. Like you were one of the first people I actually reached out to. And I was like, hey, do you want to check this out? Like do a review? I don't care. But like, tell me what you think.
Dude, I remember I dropped the ball on that. I remember how this went. I remember you sent it and I kind of like disregard. I don't even think I replied. And then I started seeing it pop up everywhere. And I was like, wait a minute, this seems oddly familiar to me. And then I went back in my emails and I think I even sent like an apology follow-up, like, hey man, I think you sent this a while ago, but if this is still on the table, I would love to
the fact that you sent an apology is better than the 85% of people that ignored me. So that's just how it went though. But I really just kind of went like blaze the earth, call everybody, send out samples to people. Like, let's just get build a little bit of natural hype. And I was very specific with people. I was like, I am not paying you for a review. Yeah. I want you to tell people what you think. And that's kind of been my approach from the beginning. And I do paid ads. I know you mentioned they're minimal, and you know my budget's really tiny for paid ads, and I don't do the affiliate thing. Yeah. Every once in a while I'll join giveaways, things like that. But at the beginning it was really just like trying to get the word out to people. And And for maybe a month or two, I did just e-commerce and really minimal sales, I don't know, 100, 200 bino clamps. And then I got my first inquiry like, hey, do you have a wholesale program? I was like, actually, no, but I'd like to make one. Let's talk percentages. And, just trying to figure that out. And, SNS Archery was one of the first ones. I sent a sample to Rob, and that's when I had the carbon fiber handle for the VA5 head.
Yep.
And they sell a ton of those, I know. So just getting those products in his hand and then starting some of that wholesale, getting product out there to people that they have a little bit more of that advertising money behind them and just more website visits, that helped. So I don't know, man. I kind of just faked it till you make it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to figure it out. But the beauty was I had such low startup cost. It was okay to go slow at the beginning. I didn't need to rush things and jump into a bunch of stuff that I wasn't ready for, which worked out.
So you mentioned the carbon fiber handle for the VA5. I know you also had a Garmin clip. What
Yeah.
were, you know, until we get to the tripod, were there any other like minor products or things that I'm forgetting?
Yeah. Trying to think here which one came next. I think it was the Bino clamp. Then I made that carbon fiber handle, which for people that don't know, it's just a replacement handle for I think it's Searay. I still don't know how to say that company.
C-Ray,
Totally.
you're correct.
Searay
Yep.
VA5. It shaves a couple ounces off of it. It's like a simple $30 product, but it's cool for people to add and shave a little weight off their pack. Then one night I was laying in bed and like couldn't sleep, and I was just thinking about all my gear, which is just kind of how I work. I'm just like always trying to dial stuff in, and I was like, I'm so tired of my Garmin like swinging on a carabiner off my
Yeah.
backpack or wherever. And I was like, why doesn't that just have like a Molly style mount? And yeah, I started working on the drawings for that and just started working on the CAD models. And I was like, revision 16 or 17, it finally like fit nice and was like what I wanted. And yeah, then I launched that one. And then I think the next one after that, I was going on a sheep hunt when I was using that Koa 553 scope still.
Right.
And it just drove me insane that it couldn't rotate. Like it didn't have a
Yeah.
rotating collar. So I just like started modeling stuff up and I was like, I could make this thing rotate. So that was kind of the next product after the carbon handle and the Garmin mount was going for the spotting scope rotational mounts.
See, that's a feature you don't even think about until you need it. And I notice when it really comes in handy to me, like sometimes when I'm sitting on the ground, especially with like the backcountry light, lots of times I'll only be able to get the spotting scope so low.
Yeah.
And by the time, if I'm up top glassing down below, I can't get my head up and over. And
Yeah.
so I'm actually angling at 90 degrees so I can just sit beside it. The other thing, the outfitting business I own in Alberta for mule deer, we do a ton of glassing from the truck. So
You
actually,
gotta be able to angle an angled spotter
Have
unless
to.
you run a straight. Yeah.
and the perfect setup I have now is I bought a little $40 adapter from Amazon, and then I've got your small ball head. And I think for truck glassing, the ball head is perfect because
Yeah.
you can never really get the cant just right to
Moving your
pan
window up and down. and, like,
it's just a
moving it,
nightmare. So like having that ball head, you can just like move it around, like open up the tension just a little bit and like kind of
Yeah.
move it where you need to, and that's been a great setup. But yeah, the ability to add that rotational function to the Kawa is a great little add-on.
And it's a minor product. I don't sell that many of them, but like I wanted one. And that's kind of where I've tried to keep all my products in that realm. Like it's got to be something that I'm actually going to use. I don't just want to make product just to like push it to like
Yeah.
make money off of it. I really want to actually believe in the product because if you believe in it, you're able to like convey that to other people as well. And so I still remember I hadn't even started selling them on the website yet. I just still had a prototype that I was running on that sheep pump, but it took us a 6-hour stalk of like 3,500 feet up this big ridge to get across from a sheep on another ridge. And as we crested it, I remember putting that scope upside down and getting under it to like look over the curve at him. And you don't have to expose your body. And like, that right there, that totally
Paid for
makes a difference.
itself.
And then I was like, I'm going to start selling these. Like it
Yeah.
works. It's not and I mean, I'm honest with people, it's not as stable as the built-in base, but
Yeah.
you get that rotation and that's worth it. So
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of these products up till now have been like no moving parts, 3D printable, pretty simplistic. Like I've got a problem, I come up with a solution for it, pretty agile, pretty quick to market, pretty low investment.
yeah.
The tripod to me kind of steps into a different category. We're talking about external manufacturing. We're talking about multiple different materials, moving parts, more complicated engineering. What was your You know what's so funny? What impresses me a lot about your products is that once you see them, you're like, how is this not here before? Like the Bino clamp. Like it's just
Yeah.
like this is such a simple, elegant solution. How? Because I was an outdoorsman's guy for years.
And it's a great setup, you know?
It really is. And there are some benefits. The fact that you can cant the binos a
Hmm.
little bit to the, to either side is kind of nice. But for me, ultimately, that big clunky adapter fitting in my bino harness, like
Yeah.
it's just a pain in the butt. You know what I
I mean, you
mean?
save 4 ounces, so a quarter of a pound.
Yep.
That's a big deal
That's
when
a
you start
big
adding up a
deal.
50-pound pack.
Yep.
You never have to think about it. You can't lose it, and it fits in your bino harness, so it's faster. So it
Yeah.
kind of just checks to me all the boxes that I wanted. And if somebody wants to take the features of the outdoorsman because they want those for the extra weight, more power to you, man. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to make a product that's like everybody needs this, because I think that marketing tactic just totally fails. If
Yeah.
it's the one size fits all, everybody, this is the only option. But for guys like you and me, when we want the simplicity, we're willing to drop some features for the weight. I think it's a home run for that one.
Yeah, 100%. So talk to me a little bit about the inception of the tripod. But to finish that statement
Yeah.
earlier. So again, funny outdoorsmen's. I went on a bit of a rant on a podcast with them about them last week, and I feel kind of bad, but I do feel like it's almost a study in disruption. It's funny when you look at the technical definition of like a business disruption, it's actually like an inferior product comes from underneath and disrupts an incumbent. So like when digital disrupted film, digital was far inferior to film. It didn't have the detail, didn't have all kinds of things, but it solves a problem in a unique way that the incumbent wasn't able to solve. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening with outdoorsmen's. It was the same thing when I did the bipod review. I feel like that's what's happening with the Spartan bipod. Like these guys come out with this seminal product, and then they don't stay on top of the innovation, and then other guys come up from behind them. But I had always used the medium compact outdoorsman's tripod with the tall extension post, which only I can't remember how tall it was, but you're only seated. It was a very for the time, lightweight option. Um, and the only other, I'm trying to think of because obviously the Slick 634 is probably the most widely used tripod.
Popular because it's affordable and
Dude, it's super
pretty
affordable.
light.
It's pretty light. It does what it says on the box. Do you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
is like the VA5 of tripods. Like it's kind of ubiquitous. And if you're looking for something in that price range, at that quality level, because like it is what it is. But like
Yeah.
I remember the
Plastic
Slicks,
parts, cast
100%.
parts, like weird stuff going on.
Yep. It didn't even exist when I bought my outdoorsman's medium compact. But the problem was it was really short. Like you couldn't even really sit up on a rock, whereas you can with the backcountry light.
With the
But
tall center
anyways,
column, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So what kind of problems were you encountering that led you to want to create? Was the backcountry light? It was the first one, right?
Yeah,
Because it
it
hit the
was.
market before the front country. So I'm assuming it was designed before the front country.
Correct. Yeah. It was I think it launched about 2 years ago now, two and a
Yeah.
half. Can't remember the exact launch, but I've been working on it for a long time before that. Um and yeah, I mean, just to go back a little bit, like when I made the bino clamp and I started glassing off a tripod a lot more, when I started shooting off a tripod, and I was probably a little bit behind the industry in that stuff of like shooting and glassing off a tripod. Like that's been around for a long time. But as I got into that, like I just kept struggling with tripods not being exactly what I wanted. And um, the first hunt that I took the bino clamp on, I had a tripod that I had taken out 2 of the 5 leg sections. I had removed the center column, made a custom piece to mount the ball head, and removed a bunch of stuff and like drilled holes in a bunch of things. And it was still heavy. And it's just like, I just got to a point that I had so many modified tripods to like get the height that I wanted and to get the features that I wanted and to be stiff enough that I was like, this is crazy. Like it just makes sense for me at this point to like start working on a design like of what actually makes sense. And all my products before that, like you said, were simple. They were all made in the US. I did everything, all the packaging, manufacturing, design, everything on them. And then moving into the tripods was a whole new world and a big investment. So I had at that point, I was totally cash flowed for 2 years with the Bino clamp, taking a little bit of money out of the business. And then I started just like saving up everything, like just tried to grow that cash in the business to make the down payment on the tripods and then, start getting to manufacturing. But it was a long process to actually find one that I wasn't just going to bring out, like a copycat of somebody else or go in and make something with the exact same specs as the Slick or a Siri tripod or an outdoorsman tripod. So as people know, those ones are made in China. I think I went through 20 or 30 different manufacturers that could make those parts till I finally found one like, okay, they make the quality of product that I'm looking for in their machining and their existing products and their existing carbon fiber. And, started working on the design with them then of where I wanted to go from there. And yeah, it was a massive investment. It was super scary, especially
what
on
kind
a
of MOQ are we talking about here? Like what type of, and you can use like round numbers, but
my first order, very minimum, had to be 1,000.
Yeah, that's wild,
so,
man.
Big money for somebody with my wife was stay at home with our kid at that point.
Yep.
I was working federal government, but you don't make a ton of money there. So it was tight.
And again, you don't have that
happen.
ability to test product market fit. You can't just 3D print a dozen of these and see if your buddies in the PRS like them. Like, you're really jumping into a whole new layer.
Yeah, and at this point, I don't mean this to sound not humble, but like I knew that if I liked the product and it was what I was looking for, there was more.
You were able to test your own design sense. You're like, I get it now. If this is important to me, it's going to be important to other people.
At least that's how I thought. And I tried to keep that pretty humble. I was like, even if it takes me a few years to sell all these tripods, like I'm going to make it work because I want one. This is what I think it should be. And I think it'll have a good reception. And I was able to test it a little bit with a few of my like more trusted retailers, like talking with S&S a little bit and, some other people. But yeah, I mean, it was a big commitment to go for it. It was stressful. It was like saving up a ton of money, taking nothing out of the business. And it ended up being way bigger of a success than I thought in that first year even. I was able to sell through almost all of them within like, I think 6 months of launch. And that's from nobody knowing about it, no affiliates, nothing else. And that's when I knew I could quit my day job, which was awesome. So it was this huge leap of like, all right, man, this is the step to where the business is going to crash or we're going to be able to like make this a thing and keep working on designs. And of course, I'd already been working on other designs at that point and thinking ahead, but I couldn't commit to buying anything else then.
This is so wild. I just had, do you know Matt from MTN Gear?
I don't know.
From New Zealand. He makes...
I know his bipods. Yeah.
Yeah. I just had him on. He was in town. He'd come to Canada for a couple things. And the arc of your two businesses are almost identical. He actually started with trophy hooks. Literally just cutting and bending some metal on the farm at home, and then he had one other really simple product. But it was the same way. Neither of those were ever going to be like base a whole business on these type of products. And it wasn't until he like buckled down and came up with the bipod, which actually recently just sold to MDT.
Yeah, I saw it at MDT at the SHOT Show that they have it now, which is crazy.
And this really speaks to marketing challenges that we've been talking about. I was so frustrated watching all these people post, look at this amazing bipod MDT just launched. And I'm like, the bipod's been on the market for 3 years. Like, but if you don't, they probably also spent $250,000 on that booth. Like,
I think a lot more than that. Yeah.
There you go. But if you don't have that kind of reach, that kind of brand awareness, that kind of marketing dollars, like there is a difference between just having a good product and then having a good product that actually achieves some type of level of market domination. And I do think that, they will be able to do more than that bipod than he ever would have done without going the route of some type of external investment. The other thing is that like marketing is a completely different skill set than product development. I learned that last year when I launched Forged. Like I have a great design sense. I know what I want in clothes. And then when you start messing around with meta ads and stuff, it's like, I don't know. And then you realize, oh, this is a whole other business. This is not the business of clothing design. This is the business of advertising savvy. And that is a completely different skill set than this other thing over here. So I think, I think what he did was the right thing. And it also provided him with a bankroll because he's got a couple other projects on the shelf that he can now kind of proceed with. But it's funny how that was the same with both of you. You were able to test the water with kind of smaller, more agile product development, and then that gave you the confidence to kind of step into step to market with like a bigger, more complex product. Now, one of the things that's really impressed me with the Aziak tripods, and I think where it really shines is actually the front country because of all the Easter eggs on there. Like, and again, I don't mean to badmouth outdoorsmans. I like outdoorsmans. I think they're really good guys. But when I did that Aziak front country versus the outdoorsman's Carbon and Negra, yours is what? What's the front country? 429, 359?
349.
349. Carbon and Negra is like $1,400 or something. Like it's crazy.
And I mean, that's the difference between, there's two differences there. Obviously, we're made overseas, but we're a one-man show. I don't
Yeah.
have 40 people on payroll. It's
Yeah.
just different. I don't know how many they have, but
It's probably more than 40. But the difference in feature set is like staggering to me. Like I could almost see if they were equivalent to each other, but one just had a bigger marketing department, or maybe they would argue we use different, more expensive materials, whatever. But the engineering itself, and what I'm trying to get at is the number of Easter eggs in an Aziak tripod is what is most astounding. Things like the convex, is it convex or concave? The post in the middle.
concave. Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
like a triangular concave.
Yeah, it's got like that curved design so that all three tripod legs can fit close. That's another element of design where as soon as you see that, it's like, why has every tripod on the planet not had this design? Like it's smaller, it's more compact, the legs don't bounce around. Also, I don't like the internal post to spin because if I leave that knob a little bit loose, it can spin, by accident. The detachable center post, I still think is a pioneering element. Is there anybody else yet who's doing that?
There are some people doing it. I did it in quite a bit different way to keep it light-ish.
Right.
It's definitely heavier, but you can do it in the field in like a
See,
minute
that's
if
the
you
thing
have
for
to.
me because it's like I don't want to have to bring both, and I don't want to have to like make that decision before I leave. Am I taking the tall tripod or the short tripod?
Yeah.
So the fact, and it wasn't until this year when I actually had to shoot from a prone position that I realized, and it was shooting from on a very steep decline where I literally wanted my rifle hanging on the edge of a cliff. I'm like, oh, I can't get my rifle closer than 18 inches to the ground with a standard tripod because the center post, and even going back to the fact that it's nice to be able to rotate the spotting scope. That's the other thing. If you're trying to get up and over your spotting scope, if you can't get your tripod head close to the ground because of the length of the center post, that's a pretty serious limitation. But what does that look like for you? Like, how do you come up with all of these like little added features? Because I think it's one thing to say, come out with a product and it's like, okay, I'm going to make a lightweight tripod. So you take a tripod, you just make it lightweight. You've made a nice improvement, probably a big enough incentive to get people to try it out. But it's like, not only is it super lightweight, it's quite sturdy, it also has all these little features. So it's like, what does that process look like for you to come up with, what's your creative process like to come up with all of those features to add into the products?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess starting with the backcountry light, I knew some basics going into it, what I wanted. I wanted it to be 45 inches with the long center column. I wanted about a 10-inch center column. I wanted 3 leg sections. So a lot of that stuff was like locked in.
And why
from previous
45
tripods.
inches for people who's listening? Because I do think it's very interesting that it's that tall. Because for me, it's never going to be tall enough to stand, which is fine. 99% of the time in the backcountry, I don't need to stand. What the backcountry did for me that the outdoorsman's compact medium couldn't is I could finally sit on a rock.
Yes.
You know what I
And
mean?
that-
Like I didn't have to sit on my butt, on my pad. I could actually sit with my knees bent like I'm sitting in a chair. So was that really what drove that 45 inches or was there something else there?
That's part of it. I mean, I'm 6'2", so I would say I'm on the higher end. There's obviously people taller than me, a lot of people shorter, but I just went out and tested a bunch of different lengths and actually just went out and walked up a local hiking trail and sat on everything and went on. And the biggest reason, honestly, is if you're on a steep side hill, like a 45-degree side hill, those two bottom legs need to be
Ah,
6
yes.
inches longer. So
Yes.
really 40 inches might do. But for actually being in the mountains, that little bit extra height for a couple ounces is worth it. So you're not trying to screw around like sliding up and down the hillside to get your tripod tall enough. So
Well,
that's
and
part
all
of
the
it.
time I'm on a little weird rocky outcropping because I like to sit on the edge of the rock. But what that means is one of the legs is going to be kind of like right underneath my crotch at the base of the rock. And then the other two are going to sometimes have to stick out significantly further in order to stick into whatever weird little crevices are there where it can get some purchase.
So that's kind of why I went that height. It was enough for me and then a little bit more. So it should fit 95% of people in every situation up to sitting on a rock. And a lot of people sitting in some of those like Helinox chairs, things like that, you can still kind of do. It's on the edge of being tall enough. But again, that wasn't my design focus. It was like backpacking in backcountry hunting, trying to keep it as simple and as compact as possible. So that's like kind of why the 3 leg sections, you can go to 5, but honestly, you're going to get more weight because you just have all the extra connections and it's not going to be as sturdy. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why I'm a 3 leg section. The convex
And more
triangular.
sections to break because
Yeah.
I'm still not a fan of those spin locks, and I recognize
Yeah.
there's compromise in all design, but they are a weak point. Like they're
They are.
definitely something that could break, and the more of those you have, the higher the
Yep.
likelihood that one of them
What
is going to break.
What do you find that breaks on them most frequently for you?
I think what I've actually, and I've never broken one of yours, to be clear. I think what it is, what I'm finding out now, and I was actually from my I've never torn apart an Aziak, so I'm not sure what configuration you use, but the way I understand it is there's like these little wedge-like sleeves that go in between the spinning mechanism and the leg mechanism, and as you spin it, they close. And he had to go through several innovations, like one didn't quite work, two didn't quite work, and getting them, with the proper tolerances. So he uses 3 sleeves. That's kind of like 3 slices of a pie. And the slick ones that I've always had break, either one of those wedges must just completely break and you can basically just spin the thing completely around. So here's what I've had. The 3 issues that I've had, it seizes. So I cannot, even though I can spin it, I cannot get the leg to go in and out.
Okay.
And then I've had those spin locks. I don't know how they actually broke, but like the leg components came apart completely,
Okay.
and I couldn't get the tripod leg
Oh,
back together. And again,
okay.
both of those issues happened with a slick tripod.
Sure. And I'm not saying that we're immune to it with the design we used. And like the tripod manufacturer that we work with obviously has some experience with that. And so I was able to work through like what's going to be the most reliable? What elements can we change? Can we change the thickness of plastic washers? What can we do there? So, and I mean, really how it works is just to explain to people too, is it's like that twist lock is engaging like a collet that's tapered. And as it goes on it squeezes it tighter. So as you twist that on, it's just like squeezing a collet down. And then there's those additional 2 plastic pieces that you're talking about that are for the inner leg to slide inside the outer. And like ours are slotted so the leg can't spin. So it's
Right.
like locked in place and it's the stop. So that's kind of what those other pieces are. But I was just curious if there's other stuff that I can incorporate that into my designs as well in the future of things that break. But we do twist locks. They're light, they're simple. It's just kind of the way that we've gone with it. Not saying that we wouldn't do a lever lock one in the future. It could totally be possible.
Yeah. And again, I don't know. I could be letting my experience with the slick ones kind of taint my
Oh,
opinion
but
because like I said, I've been beating up. I don't even know. I would think I was one of the first guys to get one of the backcountry lights. And I know we had
one
to
of them, yeah.
do one swap out because you did have an issue originally with some wiggle going
Yep. I had
on.
a bushing that came out undersize on like 30 units out of the first 100, and I had to
Talk to me a
check
little bit
every one.
about that because I was thinking to myself, he must be having just a butt puckering moment right now.
Oh,
Because like
yeah.
he just launched this thing, and then all of
Mhm.
a sudden, oh my God, it's not what
Yeah.
it's supposed to be. People are calling. Is this
Mhm.
going to be every single one? Like I can't even imagine the level of anxiety and
That was
like,
stressful. Yeah. And I guess I've never talked with anybody about this before, so I'll be totally transparent just for people and listeners too. But it's definitely kind of a sensitive thing for me. Is it's like that was tough. So when I got my first batch of backcountry lights, the way that I worked it is sea shipments are obviously cheaper when you get stuff from overseas, but they take 3 to 4 months.
Right.
You know, it can be up to that. So I got the first shipment by air. We kind of rushed the first 100 a little bit before they built all of them, and I was like, let's get those to me. I'll get them out to reviewers, get them out to my key retailers, things like that. And I just started sending them out. I inspected a couple; they looked good. I started sending them out, and then
It's
I
a bit
started
of a
doing
weird situation. Like I don't think you would. Maybe now it would be in your protocol of testing to like, but it was really like
Absolutely.
at full extension. It,
Yep.
it was a
I
bit of
unboxed
a,
the first like 100 now of
yeah,
any new model of anything
yeah,
because that scared and that takes me days sometimes,
right.
but it's worth it because I want to get it right. So long story short, I just started sending them out before I did like a 1000% inspection is the best way to put it. Cause I had my pre-production model. Everything looked good, tight, clean, exactly how I wanted it. I had the bushing between the center column and the apex of the tripod came in like 5 thousandths undersized just from some shrinkage from the mold. And that just created I don't even know,
A little
a
bit of
third of
play.
a degree of wobble when it
Yeah.
was at full extension. And I was like, dude, that is not right. That is
Yeah.
not okay. And I contacted every single person I sent one to, anybody who had bought one, and I said, hey, I got to own up to this. I messed up. Got to send that in. I got to replace that bushing. So I had every single tripod sent back, replaced the bushing, sent it back out. And that I was working a full-time job and had a kid at this
Yeah.
point. I'm like up till 10 p.m., 11 p.m. for weeks, just like disassembling entire tripods, popping bushings, replacing them. That sucked, but I wanted to get it right. I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna just be like, oh, sorry, that's just how they are. So yeah, that was definitely stressful, but I got them all fixed, and then from there on, when I got the next shipment, I inspected. They come in boxes of 12 to me. I inspected one out of every box just to make
Yep.
sure. So
And so you were able to give some feedback to your manufacturing partner that we need to upsize these bushings
yep,
and they were
all we
able to
had to
get
do
that
was
sorted.
change the mold a little bit, and we were ready to
Yeah.
rock.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing you're just not going to find out, man, until you go and start making a few of them, because pre-production is a little bit more hands-on, and you're kind of making
Yeah,
one-off
yeah,
parts or using off-the-shelf parts before you start manufacturing your own.
yeah. And I mean, sometimes on the really early production models, and hopefully this doesn't bore people listening in, but like you're trimming and shaving parts, you're like making stuff fit, you're like getting it to where you want it, and then you have all these notes, and then you're going to adjust the production for final, and things get missed sometimes. It does
Sure,
happen,
sure.
but and I hope people know that, and I hope people have got that feel from me is like customer service is so important to me because I
Yeah.
know that people are trusting their hunts with these products, and I want to get that right for them. So
Yeah, I really, it's funny. On one of my most recent podcasts, I talked about one of the benefits of what I do is that I get to play with a bunch of gear. One of the deficits is that I'm always going out with like 40% unknowns in my pack.
yeah, yeah,
And it's really super challenging. I also test things a lot harder than most people just because of my size, because of where I go, because I carry more stuff, because I'm filming. And so I do think I have a higher tendency to break things. And when I first started doing gear reviews, I'd like come out pretty hard on people, and then you only have to make a couple mistakes and then you realize, oh, wait a second, that might have been my fault. Or, oh, that was a problem for me. This product's been out for 6 years and no one else on the planet has had this problem. That you start to kind of like temper your responses. And it's like, I will share what happened, but I stopped kind of throwing companies under the bus. And what I came to realize was more important was really the company's response, because I don't care. I've had things break from everyone. And it's not the fact that something breaks. It's like, how did the company deal with it? I had a very interesting experience recently with XPED. So I had a 2-year-old Ultra 7R. So we're talking like a $200-300 sleeping pad, meant to be good to minus 30 degrees Celsius, 7.2 R rating, like what you would consider like a premium winter sleeping pad. It's only 2 years old. I'm going to start testing all my sleeping pads before hunts, but that, I'll be honest, that is not something I typically do. I go into my gear room, I grab my sleeping bag, I put it in my pack, and I just go. I get out on this goat hunt, I blow it up, and in the middle 3 baffles for about 18 inches, I didn't know this before, but they're just glued together to each other. And I watched as I inflated it, the glue let go, and this basketball forms.
Oh no.
In the middle of my pad. And I'm like, what?
Oh,
Now, luckily, if I slept directly on it, my weight would like displace it.
Distribute it.
But if
Yeah.
I went to like side sleep in front or behind, it would like push me.
Ah.
Oh, dude, it was like, and so I got back and I emailed them right away. And I will be honest, at first, I didn't get that like a new one's in the mail. Cut. Normally with a sleeping pad, they'll tell you to like cut out the valves so that they can prove you've destroyed it. Take a picture. We'll send you a new one. They kind of did this like weird roundabout. We don't have any new ones until April. And if you want something else, we'll give you a 50% off code. Or you can have a second run demo that doesn't have a warranty. And I kind of went back and I was like, wait a minute here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, the warranty is like a pad of the same pad or one of equivalent value. And so at first I was a little bit upset and then I clarified. I'm like, I'm going back out in 2 weeks. I need a pad right away. Like, what can we actually do? And they were good enough that they're sending I had this pad before and I don't like it because it's almost a quasi mummy shape. It's called their hyper light down mat. So it's the equivalent of an Ultra 7R, but instead of being a large wide rectangle, it kind of has a curved, it's not a true mummy. I would call it like a hybrid mummy shape.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's a new one. We'll loan it to you until there's 7Rs available in April. And then you can ship this one back and we'll ship you a 7R. And so on one hand, I was like, listen, you're getting a pad here in time for my next hunt. So that's fine. I'm happy. But on the other hand, it was like, I wonder what the cost difference is between the Hyperlight and the Ultra. Like, why wouldn't you have just replace it? It was on the line between, I had another example. MSR did a voluntary recall of their reactor pots because the way it works, there's kind of like a metal handle that has these like pressure fittings on the side. And when you bend it up, it just kind of bends the metal out a little bit and then snaps it in place. And that's what firmly holds the lid on when the pot is closed and you have it all packed up. And they did this voluntary recall. And what they did is they sent me like a janky handle with like 2 hooks. And so their instructions were, take the built-in handle off, throw it away, and now you have to carry this second handle. And every time you want to pick up a hot pot, you have to clip it on. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's like a $200 pot.
Yeah,
and now your solution to your broken handle was to give me like a pair of tongs that I'm supposed to carry with me in the backcountry. And so, anyways, super long-winded, unnecessary rant. Just to highlight the point that I think it's more important how companies handle when something goes wrong, that something goes wrong in the first place, because shit's always going to go wrong at some point. You know, how dramatic that is up for debate, but like you once you make enough stuff, some of it's going to break.
Yeah. No, and I just try and, people ask what my warranty is, and I tell people, it's 3 years. I've yet to deny anybody anything, though.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a legitimate thing that's my fault because of the product, like, I'm going to take care of you. If you drove it over with your truck, we'll talk about it. Like, we'll still get you set up. I don't have a Vortex. Do whatever you want to at warranty, But so it's just.
Nor do I think you should with a tripod,
Yeah.
and they're not meant to live forever, and especially not the way we treat them. I think 3 years is more than reasonable. And I also
reach out to me for parts. I go in and I calculate my exact cost on what I pay for replacement parts, and that's what I charge. I'm not making money on replacement parts, and that happens. I've sent leg sections and handles and rubber feet and all sorts of other stuff out to people who've lost them or broken them, and I'm not making money on that stuff. So
I took us way off track. So we were talking about the innovation process, and you'd mentioned, okay, so 45 inches is a qualification. A 10-inch center post is a qualification. What other types of things, and what was that process like to get the initial ideas out for what was going to make this tripod significantly different?
Yeah, so for the backcountry light, I mean, the number one thing there is weight too.
Right.
It's like I knew a certain weight that I wanted to hit, even from modified tripods, and that was what features are going to get taken out. Because on the backcountry light, it was really about refining it down to a level that we were going to keep that weight down, even if features went down with it. So on the tripod itself, when you really back up, there's nothing like super astounding about the backcountry light. It's a short 3-leg section tripod. Yes, the center column's unique. Other people have done triangular center columns before. They've started to concave them. We just got a design that we really liked that's super tight and compact. Other than that, it doesn't even have reversible like 3/8 or 1/4 inch threads on the center column. I took that out because it saved, like 3/4 of an ounce. There's nothing super fancy about the tripod itself. It was just getting down those features to what I wanted to carry in on hunts. So,
Yeah, and I think that really goes back to what you were talking about earlier. When you design something for everyone, you design a product that's not great for any one person. And I think the Slick 634 is a great example where it's trying to be a tripod for everyone. And listen, we all know it's a budget tripod. Nobody's expecting to,
yeah,
you know, claim that that's a perfect tripod by any stretch of the imagination. But like, I'm 6'1", I can't stand with the 634.
yeah,
So there's like 25 inches of useless tripod there.
yeah,
Because if I can't stand with it, there's no point in making it close to a standing tripod.
yeah. Like
And
a
I thought,
60-inch tripod.
yeah, exactly. What's the point? And especially like you can get away with a spotting scope on some of those shorter ones, but if you're
Yeah,
talking
an angled,
binos,
yeah.
like I need like a 72 or a 75-inch tripod in order to like get that pair of binos high enough. And then once you start angling yourself around, like you need, like you were saying, 40 might have cut it, but you need that extra 5 for just the unexpected situations. I find height is the same way. And that's the one thing I liked about the backcountry light. It's like it's not trying to pretend to be something you can stand with, like an ultralight tripod that you can also stand
Yeah,
with.
yeah,
Because the other thing, dude, I've tried some of the most expensive tripods on the face of the planet. When you get a tripod fully extended with center post fully extended, there's almost no tripod on the market that is going to be suitable for glassing in any type of inclement weather conditions. Like as soon as there's a bit of a stiff breeze, like it's just not a platform. That's why I see people all the time that like want a standing glassing platform. And I'm like, it's a
yeah,
pretty rare situation where you're going to get away with that because there's so much shake involved and all the rest of it. And so when you're as close to the ground as you are with the backcountry light, I think you can sacrifice a bunch of weight in different areas without sacrificing the stability of the tripod because you don't need it crazy stable when you're that
yeah.
close to the ground. Like it's so much easier to manage the vibration already.
And to be real with you, like for me, when I'm using a tripod with binos, shake doesn't matter as much because you guys got your hands on it.
Yep.
It's with that spotting scope that it matters the most. Man, when I put a spotting scope on my tripod, I get as low as possible to the ground as long as I can still see what I'm looking at. Like I'll
Yeah,
I'll go
100%.
short center column. I'll go 3 inches off the ground and lay prone while I spot sometimes. Because
And I
that's going
think
to
that's
get me
the
out
other
of
thing
the wind.
people don't recognize is minimal center post extension. I see people all the time with like no leg extension and then the center post
Yeah, yeah,
all the way up. And I'm like, yeah, like
yeah.
center post all the way down,
With your
legs
binos,
all the way
maybe.
out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
I think it's just because once they get it set, it's easier. And I do it all the time for like minimal adjustments to bring that center post kind of up and
Yeah.
down.
It makes it a lot easier because I run the short center column a lot because I love shooting prone off of that backcountry light.
Right.
But it takes you longer to get set up. That's
Yeah.
just something you give up with it. So I know people who bring both the long and short center column into the backcountry. I've just gotten used to kind of using the short center column a lot on rifle hunts, bow hunts. It's always the long center column because I don't need to get prone. So
Yeah, I've never even put the short one in there. I've never shot off a tripod. I put a bipod on my rifle. This year has really been the
gotta try
first
it,
year
man.
that I really started taking my rifle hunting seriously. And so I will be developing a tripod based shooting system for sure.
Trying.
I'm excited about it for a variety of reasons, but I just haven't had to do it yet. So it's not something that I was previously concerned with. What else? Any other major lessons from bringing the backcountry to market, being that it was kind of your first highly complicated product?
No, I mean, it was more just honestly trial by fire, figure it out as I went. I still had the full time day job when I launched it and was just figuring out what I could do next. And it was still another year till I went full time with Aziak. So I was just figuring out as I went, trying to get out and make good strategic partnerships with some retailers is just kind of the path that I went. I didn't want to stay as a just direct to consumer company. And I think part of that was influenced by Barney's when I worked there because I knew the connection that, if there's a good person there telling you about gear, what that does for like your ability to understand it. That you, no matter how good your web page or your YouTube videos are, when somebody's there actually talking to you about it, that's a huge win. So that's kind of why I went to doing both direct to consumer and getting that out to retailers. And I think that was a big win in the long run.
I think archery is a really good analogy here. Because if you think of your local bow shop compared to like a Bass Pro, and the fact that like if you want a new
Yeah.
bow, you got to go
Totally.
into a pro shop, and the good pro shops carry the good equipment. I think
Mhm.
that's a testament to the fact that it's very the amount of people with like a press at home that deeply understand everything about their bow
Yeah.
is pretty minimal, and you need that highly skilled intermediary to kind of like manage that engagement. And I think that's interesting also for just distribution and marketing power. Like I guarantee there's people who go on like SNS and just look up a tripod, they didn't even know
Yeah.
the name of your company, but
Well, you type in lightweight tripod, and I think SNS is like one of the first two or three search results. It's just
yeah,
how it works. You know, they've
yeah,
they've established themselves, and we've mentioned SNS a lot. There's a lot of others too. They're awesome, but you know, they've just established themselves as an authority. They know their stuff really well. So
yeah. And so what something else a lot of people ask me about, what type of, and we don't have to get into like detailed numbers here, but what was the decision making process for you to go full time? Like, what were you looking at? Was it a certain amount of gross revenue? Was it a certain amount of like man hours that you were spending on the two different? Was it like projected revenue? What finally gave you the confidence to pull the trigger and go full time Aziak?
it's a good question, man. To be honest, it was still a little bit of a shot in the dark, but I'll
Yeah,
bring you through a little bit of my thought process. So, you know, I had established myself at that point before I was going to quit my job for 3.5 years doing the company. I knew at that point that I had a certain number of people who were going to be repeat customers. I had a certain amount of sales through retailers that worked well. I had a certain amount of e-commerce sales, and I cash flowed the business. I was able to take money out within like 2 months of starting it just because I kind of had that lean startup. So I had always cash flowed. I'd never gone into debt, which was huge for me. You know, as a startup, I didn't have a, you know, I don't know how a lot of Starbucks. I didn't go to business school. I don't know a lot about business when it comes down to it. I'm still learning, but I didn't have anybody else to report to. So as I kind of saw those sales steadily creep up, as I saw like, oh, I can actually like provide this amount of bino clamps and tripods to people, I could kind of backflow some calculations and be like, even if it stays right here and I don't grow, I'm gonna be okay. I'm not gonna get filthy rich. I'm not gonna do anything. And as a lot of people know, like my products aren't priced super high for what they
no,
are. I think I've as a one man company, I've been able to keep those prices pretty good for the consumer still. But I knew at that model still I could kind of predict the volume and make it work, and be able to move into doing it. And yeah, there wasn't a certain revenue number that I wanted to hit. There wasn't a certain salary that I knew I wanted to take. You know, I knew I wanted to make 40, 50K a year to pay my mortgage and put food on the table for me and my kids. But from there, it was still a little bit of a risk and figuring it out. But I knew that once I went full time, I would just have so much more time to make
yeah.
connections, go to shows, do other things like that, that I kind of just believed in myself and knew that it would work out. And so far it has. I still hold it with a very open hand, but I hope to be doing this for the next 30 years, hopefully.
How has your wife have been, has how has your wife been, and how have you managed that relationship and those expectations? Because obviously she's a partner. Obviously
Mhm.
there's some uncertainty and risk involved when you take on an endeavor like that. How has that situation been?
Yeah. My wife is awesome. From day one, she's been like my number one supporter. Like she's the one who pushed me when I had invented the Bino clamp. Like, well, you need a website, you need a logo, you got to get going on all this stuff. And I think over the years, she just saw my passion for it.
Yeah.
And she knew that even if I took a pay cut, I was so much happier doing what I did. I genuinely just like loved interacting with other people who wanted the products, who believed in them. And if I only, and this is obviously not true, but like I kept saying to myself, like, if I only sell one tripod to myself, I'm going to be happy because it's what I
Yeah.
wanted to make. And like, that's obviously a stretch. I had to make some money off of it in the long run and pay back all those tripods. But she was just supporting me in that way of like, you're excited about this. This is what you want to do for the rest of your life, hopefully, run this business. I'm not looking to make a quick buck and sell out to somebody. Um, and she supported that, even if she knew it might be tight for a little bit. And thank God it wasn't. You know, I was able to jump right into full time and we didn't have any weird economic recession or anything crazy going on, and was able to kind of manage that as we went.
That's great, man. So between the backcountry and the front country, there's definitely more Easter eggs in the front country.
For sure.
Was Had you already started developing those, or was that kind of as a result of getting the backcountry out in the field and kind of thinking, oh, now that I can go a little bit heavier and a little bit taller, it'd be nice to have X, Y, and Z features on this tripod?
Yeah. Good question, man. So when I originally launched the backcountry, I almost launched a standing version at the same time. I
Okay.
thought about doing two right at the beginning to
That
like get a
literally would
lineup.
have been like almost a carbon copy with just like bigger, taller legs.
Yep,
Yeah.
taller legs, larger diameter, keeping the same features. But I wanted to kind of like curb that a little bit and be like, let's focus on this one. So I'd already thought about some of the features I might want in a heavier tripod because I could launch a backcountry light type design and it might be like 30 ounces instead of 38 like the front country. But I think for those 8 ounces, when how do I do this? There's a guy on YouTube, I can't remember who it was, but he always said like, what's your philosophy of use? Like,
Right.
what are you going to use it for? And when it comes down to it, a standing tripod for me is day trips or at the truck. Like, I'm not going to be standing in the backcountry. That's just a fact for me. Some people might. That's totally fine. You got to just be ready to carry more weight. So I was like, if I'm already going to not have my sleeping bag and tent and 7 days of food and all this other junk, like I can carry an extra half a pound to get some of these cool features built into this tripod.
Yeah.
So that's when I started integrating some of them. And I mean, there's really only three in the tripod. There's the tool in the weight hook, which is pretty sweet.
Yep.
I'm not the first person ever to integrate a tool into a tripod, but just putting in that weight hook was kind of cool. The center column that breaks apart, other people have done that. I just think the way I did it was able to make it still be 95% as rigid as if it was all one part, which is nice about it. And then having the reversible 3/8 and 1/4 inch threads. Other than that, those are kind of the three features that got added to the tripod. And then, of course,
The fact that they're lockable too, because it's not just that they're reversible, it's that it's lockable, which I found out
that's
much to
true,
my
yeah.
chagrin on another tripod
Yeah.
that I lost a panhead in the backcountry this year. But that's one of those things that you don't know how valuable it is until you have it.
Yeah. And I might even double up and do two set screws if I ever change the
Yeah.
front country a little bit, because it's like, I don't even know, 0.1 ounces, if that, to add another one in there. And
Yeah.
then it's just going to lock in your head even better.
And I did notice, depending on the panhead that you're using, because not all panheads have a perfectly flat bottom on them, and the set screw will introduce a bit of a cant. And then, so really you're relying on like a pretty small surface area in order to hold that pressure. And I'm like, I'm sure you're not doing any long-term damage to any of these parts, but I do remember thinking to myself recently, I clamped one of those down. I'm like, like this is working, but this is not ideal. Like there's definitely,
Sure.
I'm not going to lose a panhead and that's good, but I'm with you. There might be a more optimal way.
Sure.
And it still blows
I mean,
my mind that people leave those off
yeah. And man,
tripods completely.
I'm the type of guy that Loctites everything now before
Yeah.
a cheap one, especially because I've used pieces of shale to tighten Allen screws multiple times, like
Yep.
because I didn't have anything with me. So I actually will Loctite my ball head to my tripod sometimes, like a lower strength Loctite that'll still come off. But man, it's just one more thing you do not have to think about before you go in the field.
Well, and let's go back before like the mass adoption of ARCA and having all the adapter plates on the bottom of everything to be counter compatible. The amount of times I've had adapters plates come loose on the bottom of spotting scopes, and then the adapter plates at a 45-degree angle in your spotting scope, and your pan heads over here and your glass in this way. And this is the other thing that I think that is interesting about the Bino clamp is I think you were lucky, or maybe you were just observant of the state of the market at the time. I think 5 years before that, your Bino clamp doesn't work because we don't have the mass adoption of ARCA where you can just literally stick this on everything, And now that we do have which is one of the things I'm most grateful for that has happened in the last 5 years. Like all new spotting scopes are just coming ARCA on the bottom now. All tripod heads are coming ARCA. Everybody's producing adapters and everything with ARCA. In the shooting world, you still have a large degree of pick, which is fine too, because there's ways to go back and forth between those two. But I think that was very fortuitous because with the adoption of ARCA, you had the ability to develop things that had a more wide use case.
Yep, totally. Yeah, it worked out that ARCA was being adopted, and I'll probably make everything Arca forever unless for some reason something happens.
Yeah, I
But I
don't.
had, I don't know, 300 emails in the first year with the Bino clamp. Hey, can you make an outdoorsman version? Because
Yeah,
that was a really prevalent system at the time. And
that's what I was on.
yeah,
It was one of the best. And the funny thing is, it's the same thing. It's just a different size. Like it's a
yeah, it's just
dovetail.
smaller. It's more
Yeah,
like
yeah,
pick, like a
yeah,
tenny. But anyways,
yeah. Yeah. I've always wondered about. Yeah, I don't need to dive into outdoorsmans anymore, but yeah, that
you made some awesome stuff. You know, I've got nothing bad to say about it.
dude,
It's
pioneers at the time, like
totally
phenomenal
still to a
gear,
degree. Yeah.
super high quality stuff. I really like their stuff, but I wonder what the like adoption ratio is now of outdoorsmen's versus like I bet you there was a time when it was like a significant portion of backcountry hunters were using outdoorsmen's plates for
Yeah.
almost everything because it was like the only kind
Yeah.
of intercompatible way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad we're Arca. I hope we stay there.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we at? What new products can we talk about?
Yeah, man. So I don't know when you're launching this podcast. What are we right at the end of January of 25? Here in a few days, plan to launch a new tripod that's been in the works. I don't know, a couple of years now. It's been ever since I launched the backcountry. I immediately started thinking about like what other stuff can I do. To be honest, long and short of it, I guess, is it's going to be called the Ridgeline tripod. This one we got even lighter than the backcountry light, which I didn't know was going to be possible when I started. So we're going integrated ball head into the apex of the tripod.
Okay.
So we're going to have no center column. We're going to have no panning base. We're going to be just a ball in the apex of the tripod. 2 leg section. So we reduced even another leg section. And we've got a max height of 36 inches. So we kind of brought everything in. And I designed the backcountry light and the front country, in my opinion, for a more general use case. So the backcountry light, I think, hits the 10%, the like top 10% of like, I want to go super light. The front country, I think, hits a huge margin of people of like those guys doing day hunts, elk hunting here in the lower 48, whatever. This Ridgeline tripod, I'm really pushing that towards like the 1, 2, 3% crowd that wants to go super light, almost no features. It's just bare bones where I wanted to go with a tripod for some of the hunts that I do.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm using a spotting scope, but only once I've found an animal. So ball head with no panning base is going to be just fine. I just
Yep.
want to lock it in beyond that animal. It's going to be easier for shooting. No center column to deal with, no panning base. So we've got a really strong lever lock ball head on it. And then the 2 leg sections, yes, it's taller. Collapsed length is like 22 inches, but whose backpack isn't 22 inches? Doesn't even matter. You know, the front country, I think, or the backcountry light, I think, comes in at like 17 inches. So we're adding about 5 inches to it, but sometimes that backcountry light was almost too small in like the EXO pack that I run to even get up to
Because you
the
can't get 2
compression
straps around it. You're
Yeah.
100% right,
So-
man. 100%.
So
right.
like it didn't even matter at that point. Like,
Yep.
okay, let's go 2 leg sections. Let's make this thing even lighter because why not make it simpler and easier to use? Otherwise, we've got the same angle leg locks as on the backcountry light. We're using the same diameter carbon, same twist locks, same rubber feet. We were just able to like condense everything even more and cut out a bunch of features, which for some people, that's not going to work for them. The backcountry light's still going to be the backbone of their backcountry hunting setup, and we're not getting rid of that. This is not replacing that in any way. But this is kind of that hitting that super far minimalist type of use case that I found that is kind of what I wanted to use when I was out on sheep and goat hunts. I can shave another, so the backcountry light altogether is right around 25 ounces. This one's 20. So 5 ounces, I mean, you're talking just over a quarter of a pound, a third of a pound. That's a decent chunk of weight to pull off of it and keeping those features a little bit simpler.
Yep.
We also, instead of a twist Arca, we're all lever lock now on that one. So it's even quicker.
Interesting.
It's just a lever flip and it's adjustable tension with an Allen key. So if for some reason you have an Arca plate that doesn't meet the like standard, kind of the really right stuff standard that's put out there, you can adjust your tension as you need.
Right. That's exciting, man. Another use case I think for me is a secondary tripod. One of the reasons I haven't shot off a tripod is that I'm solo a lot. I like to have my spotting scope with phone set up on the animal to kind of spot impact and also filming purposes. Also I've been looking to film myself with a tripod when I'm already using a tripod.
Yeah.
But my list of needs for that second tripod is like super minimal. It would literally be like taking the final shot, so it doesn't have to be super tall, or setting up a camera and getting like a time lapse while I glass on my other tripod. So the feature list, I could still run the backcountry as the kind of primary tripod on the system,
Mhm.
but then literally 20 ounces, you're talking 1.25 pounds.
Yeah.
That's
Which
a
is the
pretty,
weight of a
with
lot
the
of
pan head.
bipods. Yeah,
Like,
that's ball head included. So I mean, a lot of like your
yeah,
more average bipods are going to be in that like 12-ounce range.
yeah.
They go to 15 inches. We're able to get to 36 inches. So this, whereas the backcountry light is more
Oh, I never even
glassing.
thought of that. Like I'm running that Gunworks Elevate and I think it's 11 something. So literally like
So
another 8 and a bit ounces and I've got a
that's what I
full
see this
secondary
as is
tripod.
for a lot of people once they get used to it, replacing a bipod for those hunting
Yeah.
situations. So like both of the big game animals I took this year in Montana were both off of this Ridgeline prototype that I've been running for a while. And the first one was a mule deer moving fast, moved out to 300 yards. I had the tripod set up as like a really tall bipod. I was sitting on a side hill. I was able to get those two front legs out fully extended, and I'm able from a seated position on a hill to use it as a super tall bipod.
Right.
And that's an awesome use case for it. I didn't have time to get prone, and I was on a downhill slope. I couldn't get behind the gun on that. So what I was getting at was the backcountry light's more on that glassing focused, can be used for shooting. Not ideal, but totally works. The Ridgeline's a little bit closer to that 50-50 mark of like, it's going to be a lot more user friendly for shooting. For you as like a second tripod, like if you need to set up a camera and just lock it in place,
Yeah.
super easy with the one lever, one adjustment ball head. For guys who scan with a spotting scope who love to have a pan head, might not be the best option ever for them because you don't get that panning base or like a dedicated tilt that you can lock in place. But for my use case, like with the backcountry light, a lot of times I didn't even use the panning base, so it's just going to just that ball to shave out features. So it's kind of the opposite philosophy of use of the front country. I can take the weight, I'll take the features. On the Ridgeline tripod, it's let's cut out all those features and let's go as minimal as possible.
I even go back to my outfitting area in Alberta where I have like two glassing setups. There's like my landscape level scanning and then there's my final approach when we're working in, and it's an archery hunt. So you're like sub 500-600 yards by the time you start picking them up that second time, and having something like a Kowa 553 or a Swaro ATC and one of these minimal tripods again, where you're not, that ball head is perfectly fine because you're literally just like finding and locking in on that animal. Yeah, that's super intriguing, man. I'm excited to see that because I think that'll fill a really interesting niche in the toolkit.
I'm excited. And again, it was like I had to be excited about it. It was something I want. I'm just not making tripods to sell to anybody. This was something that I really saw a use case for some of the hunts that I do. And I think other people will as well, especially for when weight's at a minimum. Instead of carrying a backcountry light and a bipod being at 3 pounds, maybe you grab the Ridgeline at 20 ounces and you're ready to go kind of do both of those use cases.
Yeah, that's great. And I have one of these, I think one of these just landed. Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it out to you here a few days ago. So
I got a notification yesterday that something showed up at the post office box. So I'm going to run down next week and pick it up. I'm excited about that. Anything else on the horizon?
We made that Zulu 6 tripod mount a while back, and we just finished our development and launched one for the Pro model. I know you're not I think you're not as big of a fan of the Pro model, but we still wanted to have a tripod mount for it. So
no, I wouldn't. It was funny. This is all about expectations are everything.
Yeah.
And if I thought, I think in my head, I thought the Pro model was an HDX killer. I thought it was like when they went from the Gen 1 to the Gen 2, the Gen 1's dead now. So I thought what they're doing is now making the HDX obsolete and we'll have the HDX Pro. After testing the HDX Pro and running on a couple hunts, I'm like, oh no, these are two completely different tools for two completely different use cases.
It weighs twice as much. It's almost twice as big. To me, that's a set of truck binos for me right now is what I've been mainly using them for. I put them right on that front country. Of course, and a lot of people ask this question, you don't need a tripod mount for image stabilize. But if you're sitting there for an hour, it sure is nice to not hold them the whole time.
And if you want to landscape level grid, like you're just not going to have the confidence, especially with that narrow field of view, that you have scanned every square inch without the ability to like lock and grid. And that's why save your arms to put it on a tripod. But more than anything, it's that I need confidence that I'm gridding the whole thing. And I think for me, I don't mind taking those in the backcountry. I don't think I would carry them on an archery hunt because you got to run a large bino case, and I don't want something that bulky
And the
on my
field of view,
chest.
if you're in tight in the trees.
Yeah. And the one-handedness, like you can get away with one hand, but it's just, dude, you know what was funny? And it's interesting we're having this conversation about what could be seen as very small details that are different between your now 3 different tripods, but you have been very selective about the use case for each, and each one is uniquely identified and designed to solve a particular problem set.
I just don't want to be this is the best tripod. Yeah. Everyone needs it, because that's just not true. So
no, and I think that's a fantastic design philosophy to have. And I think the HDX, the Zulu 6 has actually done the exact same thing. I think the other thing is like the light gathering capability of the HDXs is not fantastic. And so what I've been telling people, listen, if you're on a hunt, like it's a backcountry mule deer hunt, where like those first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes are crucial to your success, you want the pros.
Yeah.
Because that's
or a second set of binos that you put on a tripod.
100%. At that point, you maybe bring a pair of 15s and you use those to glass off of a tripod in the morning and at night, because the HDX Gen 2s are not ideal for that particular situation at all.
Neither here nor there. I used them. I wanted them on a tripod, so I made a mount. It was a little bit trickier on that one with the 2 battery compartments, but
I could see that. Yeah, I do like those, but again, just a different. At first, I thought I was disappointed because I was like, oh, what I wanted wasn't possible, and this is what. Yeah. So I'm glad they kind of put
weight with better light gathering and better image stabilization and battery life.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, here's the 50s, because that's what like to get what you want. This is, I still think there's a serious, because they don't own the stabilization technology. There's a couple other brands that oddly enough have the same magnification and the same objective size and kind of the same form factor,
different color,
that this technology is being licensed out to. And I think that licensee, I am very excited for the next iteration of this technology, because I think we are looking at very nascent capabilities right now. I think in another 3 to 5 years, when they can find out a way to greatly increase the field of view, and again, there's still some prism issues with light transmission and stuff. Like I think it's in its infancy right now, and if it's this good in its infancy.
So growing up moose hunting, my uncle always had a set of the Canon image stabilized that have been around for 20 years at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I've never looked into the patents, but my assumption is that Canon patent expired, and all of a sudden we're seeing this influx.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know, so don't quote me on that, but he would always outspot us 5-1 running those. And that was 15 years ago technology.
Have you ever looked through those Canons? Because on paper, actually, at first, they were so much heavier than the HDXs. I was like, oh, there's no point in looking at these. But then when they came out with the HDX Pros, all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. These two things are not very far apart from each other.
Yeah, because the Canon has a way bigger field of view. And the Canons we were using were way older, way older model. They were like 15 by 50s from, I don't know, early 2000s.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm honestly a little bit shocked we haven't seen any state agencies come out and talk about banning them. I don't want to start that seed, but they are such an advantage to me.
Dude, it's crazy.
Like it's almost unfair.
I don't hesitate now. I had a real problem kind of being the gear and glassing purist that I am, recommending them at first. But now when anybody hits me up and they're in that like $800 to $1,200 price range, and it's like I'm getting my first pair of binos, which I'm like, oh, it's Zulu 6s without a doubt. The only question is, based on your style of hunting, are you going to go with the HDX or the HDX Pros? Because they're different tools for different use cases.
Totally.
But yeah, the amount that, and that's what clued me in again out in Alberta, and my client is just outspotting me left and right. And I'm like, what the hell is going on, man? And then I borrowed his binoculars and I'm like, oh my God, like, no wonder, man. Like, this is a complete game changer. And then when you go back to a regular pair of binos in your hand, it's like, I can't believe how much these things are shaking.
I know. It's crazy. And I have to imagine that like Leica and Swaro and Maven and Vortex have to be thinking about it.
You can't just let them have that party to themselves. Like, it will be, and that's almost more exciting,
than a new EV
opportunity.
super glass. You know,
Oh
it's like,
yeah,
okay,
like
we're at like what, 98% light transmission, 99. Okay, that's cool, but yeah,
yeah.
or whatever the percentages are. But yeah,
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what's also. I think the integration of range finding is not too far away. I
could
think
happen.
you bump that up to alpha glass, you increase the field of view a little bit, you put ranging in there, you got a category killer. Like
The
that's
only
just
sad part is it's
literally
going to cost as much as a car. They'll be $5,000 by
true.
then. So
But you kind of end up spending that anyways. Like if you're
yeah,
looking at like a really good lane range finder, a good tripod glassing setup, a good on hand glassing setup, if they can put them all in one, I'm all
see what
over it.
happens. Yep.
Let's talk about your hunting a little bit because I know getting up into the alpine and the mountain is kind of what excites you the most. Talk to me a little bit about some of the hunts this year, or some of the ones that you went on this year, or even what you kind of are excited about coming up next year.
Totally. Yeah, I still try and hunt Alaska every year. I mean, all my family's up there, extended family, everything. So my dad drew a tag this year, and he was out hunting with my mom. But I was able to connect with my cousin who had a sheep tag, and I was able to get out with him. That was back in August, and that was a blast just hanging out with him. And we spent a week out there, and it rained 6 out of 7 days. Absolutely just smoked us with rain, wet the whole time. But it's just so fun to be up there. And we weren't able to connect and harvest, but we saw a lot of sheep. It was really fun. Saw some grizzlies up at like 6,000 feet, like chasing a group of sheep. That was nuts. And
Oh my
so that was a really
God.
fun hunt, just hanging out with him. I didn't have a tag, but really enjoy just being out in the sheep mountains.
Yeah.
So that was kind of one of the highlights of summer, and then came back to Montana after that hunt before seasons even started. And dude, it was a grind. It was a grind this year learning Montana for me because it's still new to me.
Right.
The hunting style here. So I was really fired up for archery. I did 10 days split up over like 3 or 4 different trips as I could get away from business. Cause obviously, August, September, October is really busy for me in the
Sure.
business, shipping stuff out. So I could sneak out midweek for a couple days at a time, which was really nice. And yeah, I spent 10 days trying to figure it out with elk on archery, and I ended up missing one, which was
Oh.
absolutely devastating. On the first night of like a 3.5 day trip, I was able to get out, and dude, that just messed with me for the
So
next
what's
three
the
days.
setup? Walk me through what happened.
Um, Pulled into an area instantly. Just I got there at like 2 p.m. Was able to work that morning and drive out to the spot. Did a massive hike around an area that I'd kind of hunted before. Got up on a hillside, and I was going to work down that evening as the thermals were still coming up because I kind of knew where the elk were going to be bedding and then moving out into a field that they were feeding in. It was my assumption. So I was bugling every 20 minutes or so, just trying to see if I could get anything located. I bumped a couple cows at one point really close, kept moving down this hillside. We were like an hour and a half from sunset. So I was like right in prime time, at least for this area. That's kind of what I found was prime time. Bugled, heard a response at sub 100 yards, like on top of him. I was like, game time. Start
Yep.
shaking, of course.
Of course.
I move in 50 yards closer to him. Don't make a peep. I watch him walk out. I'm like, no way. Like this is about to happen right here. And here's where I hope somebody can learn from my stupid mistakes here. I hope. I was behind a tiny like Christmas tree sized tree, and he
Yeah.
was out in the open, and I had tall trees on either side of me. So I looked at him. I looked at a tree, and I was like, those are the same distance. Ranged that tree 48 yards. Perfect. 50-yard pin. I know from 47 to 53, I'm within a 5-inch circle. I'm good. Draw back, get on the vitals, shoot right under him, like shaves his hair. I'm like, either I misranged that tree or he was way different than what I thought. And in my head, I had another opportunity, a different time that I was hunting the area, and I had a bull circle back 6 times, bugling him in, chasing a cow, like mounting a cow right in front of me. And I never took a shot because I couldn't get an exact range as he was sitting still. So I think that influenced me this time of like, I'm going to take a range and go for it. Like I can't miss another opportunity like that.
Yep.
And I didn't want to take the risk of stepping out because he was looking straight at me this whole time, like
Of course.
through this little Christmas tree. I didn't want to take the risk of stepping out and ranging him. So I kind of took a best estimate, and I felt really confident and just clean missed him, which I'm glad I didn't, gut shot him or hit low because it was perfect left and right and just almost trimmed his belly.
Yeah, I don't. I know you're trying to take responsibility for it, but listen, you know what happens to me is I'm a pendulum. I'll have an encounter where I didn't act quick enough. So then the next time I act too quick. And then I have an
Exactly.
encounter where he hangs around a little bit too long. And like you can't tell the future. And I think looking
Yep.
for an
Yep.
object at a similar distance is like I don't even know under those circumstances how much different you could have done. I mean, that's the thing about archery hunting, man. Sometimes
Yeah.
it just doesn't break your way, you know?
Going back through it, which everybody hindsight's 2020, you can think of 10 better ways to do it, but he didn't even know I was there. But I was so
No.
stressed he already saw me. But
Yeah.
he had no idea. I called once and then I got closer and then he walked
No, you're
out.
right. And if
I could have just waited and
yeah,
he would have circled back. I could have waited till he turned the other way and ranged him. But
yeah.
that last encounter influenced me to rush this one, and that's just how it went. So
The only other thing I might say, and again, I don't know your exact setup. One of the things I had to learn, I will get things behind me. I don't put stuff in front of me
yeah,
anymore because they're just looking for a silhouette.
dude. And this just happened. I was walking and all of a sudden I saw him and I was like,
Yeah. See, so there you
I
go.
just
You didn't even
jump
have it.
behind a tree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
But
try and
that's,
get in
I've
a,
been screwed that way before, thinking to
yeah,
myself, oh, I'm going to peek out from behind
yeah,
this thing. But then I don't, and if I would have just stood in front of it, he's not going to see me with the tree right behind me. And I think that's like almost counterintuitive when you first get into elk hunting because you think if that thing's 50 yards away, but just
yeah,
based on the way their vision works, they're not going to see you as long as there's something directly behind you cutting up your silhouette.
yeah. It was just one of those situations. Just jumped right into it, and then, long story short, I archery hunted another like 5, 6 days and never got another good encounter like that. So it was a grind, and I think it was with Brad Brooks. You talked a lot about like seeing everybody successful on Instagram and like
Yeah.
people have this pressure on me, and I'm like, and I totally got into this funk of like I gotta prove to myself that I can do this, and that just made it not as fun the
Yeah,
last few
dude.
days.
It's a
So
fine line.
during rifle season, I was able to kind of like regroup, chill out,
Yeah.
got out with some friends for opening weekend for 3 days. Didn't see anything. We had an outfitter come past us with 15 horses. Like after we were 8 miles hiked in from the truck, and like
Oh,
at 5 a.m. we're sitting getting ready, and like 15 horses. We're like, dude, what? So that was just a bummer. It's how it goes on opening weekend. And finally got out solo in like November, and just had like 3 days. Was going to camp in my truck. It was really cold, like 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And first day, I'm out kind of in the same zone, and I glass up a group of like 80 elk at like 3 miles, an hour and a half before sunset. And I'm like, all right, it's do or die. Let's get after it. And so I just, as fast as I could, I slogged my way through snow. And about 10 minutes after sunset, so I had 20 minutes left of shooting light, I was able to get in a position at like 200 yards. And they all stood up, and there was one bull in this group of 71 Browtine bull, which the area I was hunting was Browtine, and was able to make it happen. And then solo butchered him up, and then took one load that night and had to come back the next day and finish it off. But it was a lot of fun. So I was really glad to finally have some meat in the freezer.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elk hunting. She's something else.
Yeah, it's
So
fun.
what's on the calendar for 2025?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the year holds. What I'm planning for sure on is a sheep hunt with my dad up in Alaska. So I'll get to go back there, and I'll have a tag this year, which I'm really excited about.
Awesome.
And then do the elk hunting here again for sure with the bow, and hopefully try and make that happen, not make a silly mistake or something. And as I can with the business and with kiddos and stuff, get out for some spring bear hunting is always fun here in Montana. So
Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, Cody Rich does a good job of talking about reps in the red zone. And that's one of the things that's really challenging with elk is that, if you're lucky, you're going to get 8, 10 days of hunting elk every year. And if you're lucky, you're going to get 1, 2 encounters in a bedroom like you got. And then it's real hard to build up like a serious experience and skill set base with that little
yeah,
data to go off. Like it takes a while to make up enough
and
mistakes before it starts
that's
coming together.
people like to act like finding elk is easy.
Yeah.
It took me forever just to find an area to hunt. So last year I couldn't get a tag here because I was freshly moved to Montana.
Okay.
I still scouted like crazy. I couldn't even find any bulls,
Yeah.
when I was getting out. So, that alone can take people multiple seasons till they even
Yep.
get a rep with one. So it's
Yeah. A hundred
it's not
percent,
as
man.
easy as Instagram makes it look.
No, and I get into this all the time. There's a huge discrepancy. It's that, institutionalized knowledge that can either come through families or culture or your social circle. And if you don't have that, it's an immense amount of work to try
The
and
scale of
put
elk
together.
hunting from one side to the other is so vast. From
Yeah.
like I've got a ranch I shoot one on opening day to it took me 3 weeks to even find a bull. There's just such a spread. So when somebody says elk hunting is easy or hard, it's like, well, what are the circumstances?
Yeah,
It's just a totally there's elk hunts that are just harvests, and there's elk hunts that are 10-mile pack outs, and then there's everything in between. And you just got to pick the type of style of what you want to do that you're going to enjoy when it comes down to it.
100%. All right, man. I don't want to keep you too long. I'm going to make sure to put the website and the Instagram in the show notes. Anything else you want to close out with or mention to everybody before we kind of log off?
No, I mean, I appreciate all you people out there. I'm sure some of the listeners that have supported me over the years. Like, it's the customers that make this happen, and I love hearing from you. Send me how your hunts go. Let me know how products work out. If you have suggestions, and if you ever have problems with your gear, you just reach out, and I'm always happy to help the best that I can.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to get my hands on the Ridgeline, and I'll make sure once I get a chance to kind of put it through its paces, I'll reach out and let you know what my thoughts are.
Sounds good, man. Awesome.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.